Well, I'm here to.
That's what I'm saying.
No,
what is going on?
Well, I was telling you what the thing though.
The thing about it is the whole Christian religion, whatever, is not judgmental, but you are the most judgmental people on earth.
Preach.
I've not judged anyone so far.
We like everyone. God made everyone, and He knows how it is.
He knows what I've said since I've been
We
here.
don't care. Your flag is racist.
I understand your
I'm pulling the racist card. I am pulling the racist card.
That's cheating.
That is not cheating. That is racist.
Leave it
No, come on.
That is racist.
Some of my best friends are black.
I'm not talking about black people. That's even more racist.
What are you talking? You are so confusing. You are under the influence of alcohol.
It's racist
So what were
because
you
you're at a
saying?
gay pride parade and you got that. That's racist.
Race is not sexual orientation.
It's prejudice is what she meant.
That's what she means. Anyways, Jonah didn't want to go to Nineveh because he knew God would forgive, because he hated them because they were so wicked. If I was like Jonah, then that would be proof I hated people. I wouldn't go. And hopefully God would steer me here. Honestly, I've been in Lexington, Kentucky all day. Preached at the Gay Pride in Lexington. Got punched in the face. So I could have went home, which would have been a primary desire of mine, but I am bound by the spirit of love in me to be here. Because if no one else comes, who's going to say? Who's going to tell?
I get your drive and I get your reason behind it. I do.
Now I am going to preach soon, though.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
And this is literally just me trying to suss out what you believe, not me trying to trip you up. I promise.
Sure.
Because I would not put that on anybody having gone through it myself. It's the worst thing you can possibly go through to go through the process of losing your faith. It is horrible.
I believe, now from my perspective, you've been deceived. So
Maybe, but I disagree with you. I have done a lot of research, and I would hope that you would respect me enough to believe that I put in the time and the work to come to the conclusion that I came to.
intellectually
Sure.
speaking, attempting to, yes.
church do you work in?
I don't tell. You can't join my church.
Do you believe in free will or election?
What'd you say?
Do you believe in free will or election?
Free will.
Free will?
I know where you're going. Calvinism, is horrible, but it leads a lot of people to confusion. Intellectually speaking, for me, I love debating the whole subject of Calvinism.
Are you Arminian?
I wouldn't even agree that I'm that. I would say there's really three slants. Most theological debate is you're either Arminian or you're Calvinist.
Calvinist.
But there's a third, and it's moral government. And so that's what it's called, okay? Now, you have a lot of technical terms. They're not in the Bible. Calvinist isn't in the Bible, Arminian, but it's a label for a belief system. So,
Thanks.
anyways, moral government is what I would stand toward, that God's law is reasonable. Mankind is born able to keep the law of God because he did not, by his own free will, he has brought himself
But
under
was man
condemnation.
born able to keep the law of God?
I would say he is, because the law of God isn't impossible. Like Deuteronomy 30, 11, and 12, the law of God is not impossible, but you cannot keep it. It's not in heaven that you've got to send someone up to heaven to get it.
Yeah, I'll be there in just a sec, sweetheart.
The law of God isn't across the sea that you need someone to go get it, but it's nigh unto you, even in your mouth and your heart, that you may do it. So the law of God isn't impossible, biblically speaking. Every command that God gave them in the Old Testament was because they could have done so. Otherwise, he's a tyrant.
Can I ask a question?
So he never commands the impossible.
Why did God, when the Bible tells us that God is not the author of temptation, why
Or
did God...
confusion, he doesn't
or
tempt
confusion,
us.
Right. Why did he
With evil.
Why did he place the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden?
But well, it's obedience sake. Like, think of this. Love has to have the characteristic of willfulness.
Is that not temptation, though?
It's not tempting them with evil. Like, he's not implying to them to lust after this woman or to steal something. Like, hey, go steal that.
Would it not be evil to disobey the command of God?
It would be evil to disobey it, but he's not tempting them with an evil moral action. He was giving them an opportunity to obey. But temptation in the evil sense is an opportunity to disobey, or the insinuation that you can disobey.
But God had the ability. So God created man.
Whenever God created man, put it this way, he restricted himself. By giving man free liberty made in his likeness, he restricted himself in what he could and could not do in the operation of man, if voluntariness is going to be actual.
The Bible tells us that the path to heaven is narrow, and the path to hell is wide, and many will
Matthew
enter
7,
into it.
right.
Yeah. So, God, in his infinite foreknowledge, and his omnipotence, creates man.
Now, I'm an open theist. So
What's an open theist?
open theism is the perspective on God's foreknowledge. So obviously, in my opinion, if you believe God has absolute exhaustive foreknowledge, the only consistent theology is a Calvinist. Arminians try to teach this free will thing, and everyone's got free will, but God has eternal exhaustive foreknowledge, which completely excludes freedom of the will. It's going to be what it'll be, whether you choose him or not. It's founded from eternity. God knows it as it is, and so you can't change anything. It's kind of like which came first, the chicken or the egg. Which is supreme, God or his eternal exhaustive foreknowledge? So, Plato and all the philosophers of history past, especially the Greek philosophers of that hour, were teaching this eternal now perspective of God. That everything about the existence now is known to him, everything about eternal future is known to him as absolutes. But open theist perspective, and I believe it's what you see in the scriptures, is that God can cancel future prophecies based off of present conduct of man. That he may know the future as certain to the extent that it's certain, but there are things about the nature of reality that aren't done yet, that aren't certain even to God.
So would you say that God did not know when creating man that man would, for certain, eat of the tree of the knowledge?
Exactly. I don't
So
think
then why give him free will?
For the sake of their voluntary love toward him. Again, the relationship
Why did he make the angels the way that he made them?
Same. For relationship, the voluntary component.
But they don't have free will.
Well, they do. Even
Well, then why did he make man?
Well, it's not that I'm saying he needed something else beyond the angels. He gave the angels.
Don't be so hateful.
Well, I'm not. You want to keep this? I don't want it.
You won't take it?
I'll stand on it, but I won't hold it.
Yeah, take it.
So
I appreciate you giving it to me.
yeah. So anyways, the angelic host. There's things about that question I don't have a reason for. Why did God make man? In the sense that he had angels with this voluntary component. They disobeyed him. He gave them no atonement. Then he made man. Again, I'm not sure what was the motivator there other than the same purpose of relationship.
This is a symbol for Christians too, though, right?
Well, the seventh color, it's missing a color.
Which one? Indigo?
I think so.
Violet?
I don't know the
I
names
mean,
of them all.
it's just meant to be a rainbow.
Yeah, it's 6 colors, but the rainbow is 7. The traditional rainbow.
Truthfully, I'm a graphic designer. I work with color all the time. Truthfully, the rainbow is a gradation of color through the entire visible spectrum.
Of course, yeah. So it's multiple greens and blues.
It's closed. I'm not trying to be hateful. I'm just trying to fight hate with love.
Okay, sure. Thank you. I'll take it.
That's really sweet of you.
So, it goes back. I want to stick to that one question just briefly, and then I do have to preach just before I go. And so, God's nature corresponds with reality. God is everywhere that is omnipresent, not everywhere that is not. He knows all that can be known. That's the definition of omniscience. All that can be known, all that's available in reality to be known. God has a reality he lives according to. And so it's not that he lives in an unreal place that doesn't exist or his reality is somehow different from our own. And so there are things about reality that cannot be exhaustively known, are not exhaustively known. And so people say, well, that's a limited God. He knows the future for certain as it is now. That, for example, if a person lives in the homosexual lifestyle, biblical perspective, and they continue that lifestyle, and they die in that lifestyle, it is for certain, and he knows it is certain, they'll die and go to hell.
Can you tell me the scripture that forbids homosexual lifestyle?
1 Corinthians 6:9, Galatians.
That's one.
Galatians 5:19 and 20. Romans 1:26 to 28. And then,
Leviticus.
well, that too, but that's Old Testament. A lot of people at festivals, they don't take the Old Testament as valid.
There are 6 verses in the Bible.
And then with 1 Timothy chapter 1 verse 8, that the law is not made for the righteous, but for the sinner, for the ungodly and disobedient.
Sure, but that has nothing to do with the sin of homosexuality.
It mentions homosexuality in that list of sins again.
In the New Testament, the only person that I have seen talk about homosexuality, as far as I can interpret it, genuinely, honestly, is Paul.
Yeah, well, he was. Now, in the Gospel of John and in some other Gospels, we have Jesus' recorded words, that do you not know God made them male and female, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother, be joined to his wife. and the two shall become one flesh, Matthew 19:5.
If
So
this was going to become the monstrous sin that, like,
it's part of the downfall of a nation, moral corruption.
why did the Bible not, knowing that this was coming, make a bigger deal about it?
I think it did. I mean, 6 or 7 verses is a big deal.
It's not
But I mean,
at all.
think about how many
Do
verses
you know
are
how big
mentioned.
the Bible is?
Well, I mean, think about 15-some thousand verses.
Dude.
But you think about how many verses are about murder. Would it take a lot, like every page, or would it just be sufficient to have one?
Do you know what the word in Greek in Romans that is used to refer to homosexuals is?
It's or Senecite.
Arsenicatai. You got close. Do you know what it means?
What it means, that I've seen in the lexicons, the Strongs, means as a man lies with a man as he would with a woman.
It means
also means
literally
prostitute, temple prostitute, how they did the worship in Corinth.
That is the same word for that.
It is, but think about their worship style. In their culture,
I just want you to think about the fact that you're making a big logical leap to thinking that that's definitely what they're talking about.
well, in their culture, though, their worship practice, to the highest extent, was homosex. Male and female was one thing, but the male in their cultural
I don't know
day,
that you're right about that.
Well, I mean, but
there
think
was
about-
homosexual sex during that time, but it wasn't a worship practice necessarily. Basically, people were expected to have both a wife and a male student, essentially. That was how the Romans did it.
well, now the male was the sexual symbol of their culture.
Yes, it was. And it was all their money, too.
So, but within that definition, you are correct in saying the temple worship type of component. But the definition of the word is meaning towards the behavior. It's not like if you were a part of the temple that you were automatically that word. But it's the behavior component that's coming into play. That's
I know
not like
you
a
gotta
job,
do your
but
thing, and I don't want to cut you off, and I want you to be able to have your time. I want